Welcome to the Influence Experiment, where we seek to explore the art and the science of building influential capacity. Every month, we want to raise thought-provoking ideas of how you can be an investor of the influence you carry. If you're ready to journey with us, then it's time to experiment.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Influence Experiment as we seek to learn how to invest our influence well. Well, today we are talking about the art of coaching. It doesn't take long to see that there are good coaches, bad coaches, great coaches, and terrible coaches. Coaching carries further than just sports. It goes into therapy, business, schools, churches, owning pets, teaching someone how to play chess, building a following on social media, how to cook, how to parent, sell real estate, run a cafe, referee a game, write a book, and the list can go on and on. There's an art to coaching an individual or a group of people towards a common skill set and goal. But what does that art look like? What are the challenges of coaching? How do you coach someone that doesn't want to be taught? How do you handle your own self-esteem as a coach? To answer all these questions and more is youth pastor, football, and baseball coach Jordan Butler. Jordan, my man, thank you so much for joining me today.
Tony, thanks for having me. I'm excited to dive in.
Dude, it's been a long time coming that we've wanted to record this episode together, and it took us going to different states, both of us,
right,
to be able to record this together in Tennessee. But here we are, man, and so pumped to be able to record this with you. Would you be able just to share a little bit about yourself before we dive in?
Yeah, so Jordan Butler, youth pastor. I'm married to my wife, Hannah. She's here with me. We live in West Virginia, youth pastor, and I coach, teach, do a bunch of things. Been coaching for 7 years, which is crazy. Mm-hmm. It's crazy to think it's already been 7 years. Been a youth pastor for, I started as an intern 10 years ago, intern for 5 years, and I've been a youth pastor for 5 years.
Come on.
So, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And how long have you been football coaching and then baseball coaching?
So football's been 7. My first year of baseball was last year. So this year actually starts here in about 2 weeks.
All right.
It'll be year 2, so coming up.
Come on, dude.
Yeah.
So good. And as a baseball player of 15 years myself, I love that you're picking up the baseball coach mantle because we baseball players, and yes, I can still refer to myself as a baseball player, even though I don't look like it whatsoever anymore, that we need some coaching. And I love that you're willing to hop into that space as well, not just football. But man, would you be willing to share if you got something, an embarrassing story as a coach? What comes to mind?
I had a couple. Some of them I probably shouldn't share, but the worst one that I could think of. So last year was first year of baseball, and unlike you, I never played a day in my life. Never played, never put a glove on. The guy I coach with in football as well, and he just respected me as a relationally driven leader, so he just wanted me in the dugout. So I didn't know one of the golden gems of baseball is when somebody's throwing a no-hitter, you don't talk about it. And we were playing our rivals in a huge game, and we had our ace, is what we call him, and pitching. He was throwing a no-hitter, and the game was almost over. And I yelled something out like, "Man, they still haven't hit you, bro." It went dead silent. And everybody watched me, and it was truly embarrassing. Fits the word really well. So ended up being fine. We won the game.
Did he complete the no-hitter?
I don't think so.
So you jinxed him.
I did. I ruined the game. I ruined it.
Oh, bro.
So there you go, man.
It's okay. Hopefully he forgave you. I don't know if I would. If I was a pitcher, because I was a relief pitcher, so I wouldn't have done a complete game. But if that was me, I don't know if I would have. So just saying. I'm just playing.
It's all
sort
good.
of. well, hey, today we're talking about the art of coaching, knowing that again, you're going to be speaking a lot through the lens as a football coach and a new baseball coach, but knowing that coaching, as we said in the intro, it's bigger than sports. Would you be able to talk to us and define, maybe from a 30,000 foot perspective, what's the art of coaching?
I wrote this down probably in 5 different ways, and then I erased it and just went back to the first one. There's so many ways you can define it, but the thing that what my brain, hearing this question, defined it, there's training methods, standards, set goals, and roles that help players reach a certain peak of performance to achieve the ultimate goal, winning. And the most important part of that whole thing, goals, roles, and all that, for me, is defining what winning is. Everybody, when we hear the word winning, when it applies to sports, we think of scoring more points than the other team.
Sure.
For me as a coach, and fortunately the people that I work with coaching, winning isn't just winning the game. It's also helping kids become, for football, helping these young boys become grown men.
Yeah.
So later in life they become good fathers, good at their jobs, good husbands. So helping kids reach peak performance in whatever that winning is. So,
well, what I love about that definition, you said that you're defining winning, because it is, you're right. Like with sports, the no duh is like get more points than the other person. But in other areas where you say like how to be a good father, like what does winning look like? Or when you, if you're someone's trying to teach them how to play, a game of chess, or trying to, teach them how to sell real estate. Like defining what the win is may seem like a no duh, but it's so needed to clarify. Right. What is the win? Spell it out black and white so that they can have a clear path toward achieving it. So I think that's really, really good. Would you be able to run back one more time just the definition, just so we catch that clearly?
So winning, for me, how I wrote it, is training methods, standards, set goals, and roles that help players reach a peak performance to hopefully win, to get to the ultimate goal of winning.
That's so good. Yeah. That's so good. Thanks for sharing that definition with us. What's the difference between the principles of coaching versus the art of coaching? So two different similar sounding words, but kind of splice the difference here. Principles of coaching versus the art of coaching.
I think the way I interpreted this question is art of coaching to me sounded like a more broad, like I didn't not getting into the specifics of winning, what the set goals, what the set roles are. I think principles dives into a little bit of what the specifics are. So for me, like the first thing that came up, one of the most important principles of a coach is knowing your role. I've seen that as in a good and bad way. I've seen guys know their role really, really well, and they just attack that. And they use their skills and strengths to help the kids win. I've seen the exact opposite. I've seen people in their role try to be something that they're not.
Yeah.
And
Well, and even as a football coach, knowing your role, I don't know football it's crazy well, but I know that there is usually like a defensive coordinator, there's an offensive coordinator, special teams, like there's the head coach, so there's different roles of coaching even within the football team alone. And to know that if someone is choosing to move out of their lane, that there is it can cause jealousy, it can cause chaos, it can cause disorganization, lack of clarity of vision. So to be able to say like, hey, I know my role as a coach is definitely a principle piece to know, and to know that who the players are, or the people that you are trying to coach up. So I think that that's really a good understanding to know that within the principles of coaching there is a role. So it's not just we're defining the goals like within the definition of art of coaching, but within our own selves, we are choosing to intentionally know what is my role. So what's the goal and what's my role in that? Man, that's good. That rhymes.
The goal and the role. Yep.
So hey, what are some of the challenges that comes with coaching others? What would you say to that? There's a ton that can probably come to mind, but where are a few of them?
There was two that really, every time I think about coaching, I'm like, man, these are the two things as coaches with the staff I'm on that we attack every year. We sit down, we talk about these two things. The toughest one, and football's a great example of this, is the different skill sets. And so that you think of football, you got your quarterbacks. There's different types of quarterbacks. You got your linemen, the big dudes. You got your running backs, the linebackers. You got your kickers. You got your defensive backs. All these different body types, different speed, skills, size, intellectual capacity. To put them all on a field to achieve the set goals together in all these different types of plays, that's tough.
I'll bet.
That's tough. You think about football, there's only like 10 games in high school, right? Across the nation. All the work that goes into those 10 games for those 12 months, the weightlifting throughout the entire year in the off season, the amount of film that is watched, it's unbelievable to to do exactly what I just said, to get all these different physical skill sets onto a field to achieve the goal of winning. And then the other part that's tough in every phase of coaching, not just sports, is personality types.
Yeah.
And this generation of teenagers, it's a different ball game than when me and you were playing. Pun intended. It's some kids, like when our parents were playing, they would say the comment, they would call it the dog training method, where they would the crack the whip method, where the coaches would yell and scream. That was actually more effective with our parents' generation than it is today. So being able to manage the personality types and the physical skill sets, got to be 1 and 2. So.
Yeah. Well, and then I can see how, even coming from like a youth pastor's perspective, that we both can resonate with the idea of like having student leaders and knowing that there is trying to corral and organize. You said it's challenge number 1 of just trying to put everyone together and make them, allow them to foster unity and community and commonality in there. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough when student leadership within a youth group, but then also just having patience in that is a big part of it, and being willing to like work with people, work with students, work with the person that you're coaching, and not losing your cool, which can be a difficult thing, but also then knowing that the Gen Z is a different breed. Different generation of how we need to learn the personalities. We need to learn how do we coach them well, learn how to how's the player learn, adjust, take feedback, critique. Not saying that we have to coddle. Obviously, we're not. I know that that's not your style either. Coddling's not it. No. But at the same time, we have to be careful in knowing the personalities of the people that we are coaching. So super good, bro. Well, who's someone that you deeply admire for their coaching ability, and what qualities do you admire about them?
There was 3, and 2 of them are similar. Coach Crean and Coach Price. They taught. One was my high school football coach. One was my college coach. They coached on different levels. Some coached on the professional level. Just being around them and that quality of coaching and person, they really invested on building the person, which results in building the player. And I love that. It's so simple, but it's in my experience, it's true. And fortunately, the other guy that I'm so grateful for is Coach Thomas, Brian Thomas, the guy I coach with now. He's not only my friend, but he's somebody I really look up to. He's somebody, I can't tell you how many people in coaching, sports, in youth ministry, they say, yeah, we're here to build people, right?
Yeah.
And they don't do it. And just being around him and having literally like a step-by-step process and what he does to build the kid, which helps them invest into the program more, which leads to the player playing better on the field. It's we've been so blessed. So being able to see the fruit from those 3 guys has changed me as a man, as a coach, and it's helped me be a better husband. Every aspect of my life, coaching, it applies, right?
So, no, it totally applies, and so that's super cool that you're able to have a couple of really good role models. I can think the same as well within like my own baseball coaches who taught me certain things, to when I worked at Chick-fil-A and my managers, aka a coach that really taught me the tricks of the trade, and I really that impacted me when I'm thinking about the mentors and coaches in my life of making me who I am today. So, what would you say are some of the pitfalls to avoid when it comes to being a coach?
I think we mentioned a little bit, but we can dive in deeper on this. It's so important to stay in your lane. If you have a role as a coach, if I have a role, I have learned it is so important that I stay in that role. Because if I go out of my role, I'm going to step on somebody else's toes, who their skill set is in that role for a reason. That's going to prohibit the team from moving forward. And I've seen it in other ways too. I've seen guys not just go out of their lane, but just not push their lane enough in every aspect in life, whether it's coaching, a parent, a husband. You got to attack the moment. You got to attack it. I've seen players. We've all seen players on TV, even on the biggest stage, shrink in the big moments. Every person that I've seen as a winner, and we can define that in different ways, is somebody who attacks the moment. I've been able to play with some NFL guys. I've been able to play with pros, against some pros in basketball. Like, the guys that are always consistently winning are the ones that attack the moment. And the opposite of that is true for coaching. It's the people who don't attack the moment. So,
Yeah. No, that's really good. That's really good, dude. What would you say is like, how do you like work with someone who's like, you attack the moment is a super good like principle.
Right.
But like, how do you work with someone who is, they attack the moment too much? Like they're like overzealous of attacking the moment. How would you say with that?
Man, that's a great question. I like those people because usually the people who attack the moment, they're invested. Usually the people that attack the moment, they want it. And if they want it, that means they're probably coachable. And that's just in my experience. So for those people, I would say in my experience, they're usually coachable. You just gotta help them get in their lane, right? Attack the moment, but in this way. Yeah, that's the only thing I could think of, but that's a good question.
Yeah, no, and I think that to say that they're teachable more times than not, I would argue you're right, that they have this hunger when they attack the moment. They have this hunger like, oh, like put me in, coach.
Right.
What can I do? How can I do better? Now, but also knowing that sometimes they can attack the moment with a sense of I'm right. And
True.
this is the only way that I'm going to do things my way. And we can address that maybe in just a little bit here, but knowing that there is both sides of that coin, but to agree with you that to keep working with them, and clear is kind is a word that comes to mind for me, of like, how do you keep help people keep in their lane, be clear,
Right.
be accountable, have structure, and
I had a good thought too, Tony. I've heard from a coach one time. He said, "I've seen there's difference between hard workers and good workers. Sometimes hard work. There's a lot of people who work hard their whole life and get nothing done, and there's a lot of people who work well and don't work as hard but get more done. And I think that works with players. Like as a quarterback, if I'm coaching quarterbacks, I'm not going to go tell him to go kick a bunch of footballs. He can get a lot of work in, but that doesn't mean he's going to get better. So I think that could apply well to your question.
No, that's good. And the nuance of, we're not just telling people to work hard, we're telling them to work smart. Like work smart, not hard. We've heard that, heard that phrase before.
Right.
And yes, no, that's good. That's a good nuance to speak towards. So, hey, the influence experiment is all about finding the art and science of building influential capacity. What would you say is some of the science, some of the objective truth in the art of coaching, and what is some of the art, subjective personal expression in the art of coaching?
It's a great question. I had to think about this one. An objective truth, if there is no coach, nothing gets done. And that's not just sports, that's in life.
Yeah.
And we need coaches. Everybody needs one. Jesus was the perfect example of that. He had a coach. It was his father. How many times did he go to the garden to get coached up?
Yep.
How many times do football players, you got to go to film and look at the notes that the coach put to get coached up? In everything, we need a coach.
Yep.
We need a coach.
Oh, that's so good.
So, yeah.
And when you think about the art, what comes to mind?
I keep going back to football, and I think even being around baseball, I think I've seen it too. Like you go back to watching film, like NFL films, all the coaches are wearing suits and ties, and they sound like robots. You know, run hard, hit them hard. You know, now we have coaches who are just themselves, and not everybody's running the wing T offense, it's everybody's doing their own thing, and people are getting more frustrated with football. I love it even more watching it because everything's changing, and I think it's one of the most beautiful games there is. Just with the scheme, the different body types, every body type has a position on the field, and the art of the game is changing through personal expression because people are changing and learning to be themselves in the game. I think it's made the game a lot more fun.
Oh, that's so good. But even to be able to say that, like, there's different personality types, body types. You earlier said intellectual types, like where that everyone has a role on the football field, which I think is really, really cool to be able to speak towards. Now, of course, I would say that that baseball's the number one sport. But you can fight me on that later. But no, I'm just I know that many people have a disdain for how seemingly boring baseball can be. Like, no, it's like it's so intricate and so neat, and the nuances of every single play, which I know that anyone can say about the particular sport in which they love.
Right.
But well, just a moment ago, you mentioned Jesus and being the coach in which we follow, or be Jesus following his heavenly Father. When we look towards Scripture, there's a beautiful psalm that says, and David shepherded them with integrity of heart, with skillful hands he led them. Let me read that one more time. Psalm 72:78. And David shepherded them with integrity of heart, and skillful hands he led them. What can we learn from this verse and apply it to this conversation of coaching?
For me, when I read this and thinking of David, the most important word in this for me is integrity. And you want to talk about David, he wasn't always a man of integrity.
Yeah.
Integrity is something I think you can learn, and I think it's something you can coach. So as a coach, integrity, reading this passage and looking at the example that David gave us, as a coach and as a leader, and David was a great example. I'm never going to ask somebody that's under me, ask them to do something that I wouldn't do with them, or that I've never done. And you look at David, he learned integrity, right? How many times did that dude mess up? But the coolest thing about David is he kept going.
Yep.
And if we keep going, God keeps giving us grace.
Yeah.
And David is the perfect example of somebody who wouldn't ask his soldiers, his men, to do something he wouldn't do. He's the guy that put on the helmet, said, "Give me the sling, let's go."
Yep.
And I think that's important as a coach.
Yep.
So yeah,
I think that's a great articulation to be able to say that David wouldn't do things that he wouldn't ask his soldiers to do,
right?
Until he did. Right. With living in sin or living in pride and living in lust and so on and so forth, but to also know that generally speaking, that was David's heart posture of his integrity, and then also to know that he had skillful hands. And what I think about what's so unique about this particular verse is that it couples, in my opinion, the science and the art together. And that the integrity of heart is the science, almost like the objective truth. Like, you have to have integrity as a coach. You have to have character as a coach. Fact, just period. But then to say that there's skillful hands, there's an art to this. Every personality is different. Every coach can be different. Doesn't matter what you're doing, what position you're in, what role you're in, what job you're in. There is skill that can be and should be gained and gleaned from as you take up the job that you're in, and that's the art behind it. And so there's art and there's science in this one verse, which I just think is, again, a beautiful mantra to speak toward when we look at the life of David and the Psalms. How would you say? Let's talk about Jesus. How did Jesus model coaching?
Man, so he gave us the perfect example. Recently, an anthem that I've had for my life is 1 John 2:6. Those who claim to be in Christ must live as he did. So when we say, what example did Jesus give us? The perfect blueprint. And literally, praise God that people saw what Jesus did and wrote it down. So what the thing that always sticks out to me that me and you've had conversations about is how Jesus approached people. So when we talk about different skill sets and different personality types, Jesus was king of being able to approach any tribe, any religion background. It didn't matter. Color of skin didn't matter. Jesus was the king, literally, at being able to approach different people, but always having the end goal in mind in their conversation.
Yeah.
Always. Super intentional. If I'm having a conversation with somebody, I'm always like, if I'm their shepherd as a pastor, I always have, I know that God has called me as their shepherd to get them to this point. Every conversation I'm having with my flock that God has given me, I'm trying to get them to this point. We can be talking about tacos, and I'm going to be trying to talk about, hey, this is where I feel like God's called us to be.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, I love that, and I think that there's obviously a deep intentionality that's needed. When we look towards Jesus, he was very intentional with every single conversation he had. While also we can say, just when we think about ourselves as coaches or ourselves as guides, that we need to have an openness to shift in the moment. Like, we can have an agenda. That's totally fine. We can have a goal. That's fantastic. It's clearly needed, as we've already talked about. But to have a flexibility. To be able to know that, hey, like, people are messy.
Right.
Jesus knew that. I would love to say that Jesus was flexible in moments that he pivoted or he shifted, because people are messy and conversations are difficult. People make mistakes, and there isn't a cookie cutter answer to every single conversation. Right. So being able to have this grit of intentionality of you have a goal in mind, while also there's this open handedness to saying, okay, you know what? This may not go exactly the way that I have intended, and I think that, again, Jesus modeled that, because we also know that he gave up some of his divine privilege, some of his divine knowledge to be able to be like fully human. So he even said, I don't know the time or the hour that the Father's come back. So we know that he wasn't fully infinitely knowledgeable on earth at times. So he had to be flexible himself of like what's going to happen. I don't think he fully knew when he woke up that morning, this is exactly what's going to happen every second of every day. Did he have divine insight? 100%. But he had this flexibility to him as well. I think we're called him all that consistency of goal setting while also having this flexibility in the way that we operate as well. So that's super, super good. Hey, how does wrestling with your sense of competency, self-worth, self-esteem play into the concept of the art of coaching?
I've been so spoiled to be a part of a lot of winning teams, and most of the time it has nothing to do with me. So sometimes it did, most of the time it didn't. And it'd be so easy to get complacent. So just even coaching in football, the last 10 years, the program been part of has only had one losing record, and we play some really tough competition. And even baseball last year, my first year coaching baseball, we were really, really good. It was the best team in over a decade at that school. So it'd be literally had nothing to do with me, right? I didn't know. I learned that you can run first base to second base. That's like rule number one. So it'd be so easy to be like, cool, we got to figure it out. And you can't do that. You can't do that with sports. You can't do that with anything. If you don't adapt, you'll die. And yeah, you got to keep moving. You got to be hungry. It all starts with being hungry. How bad do you want it? That sounds so simple and cliche, but the people, in my experience, the people that want it and continue to get after it, the continual grind, consistency, those are the winners. Those are the people that complacency is not in their vocabulary. So that's what I'm trying to be.
Yeah. Well, and even knowing that, like, not refusing complacency, excellent. Now, that's a great quality to be able to speak towards that we are supposed to refuse complacency. I think that's a really excellent thing to be able to think about. And for you as a coach of football for 7 years and then a baseball coach of 1 year, I can imagine that there is a little bit of like self-esteem that you might potentially could wrestle with, knowing that football's your bread and butter.
Right.
Baseball, you had a hunger. You had a hunger. I want to keep serving. I want to keep coaching. Let me find another opportunity. And honestly, man, kudos to you that you're hopping into a sport that you didn't even really play as a kid or anything like that. That you're just wanting to coach kids, that coach students. I think that's awesome. But like I can imagine that there could be you're refusing complacency, which is awesome.
Right.
But like, what about that self-esteem piece of like how do you wrestle with that? Like, am I good enough to do this?
Right.
Why am I doing this? So on and so forth.
So I've been blessed with winning in games, but I've also been blessed with losing behind the scenes. So building the person that hasn't always happened. So in that realm, which is the main reason I'm part of the teams in youth pastor, the failing has been good in a lot of ways because I don't like losing. I don't like having something I put time and effort to and it doesn't work. Just like every other person on the planet. So that has been good for esteem. Losing, right? That's when you find out who you are. That's when you find out a real man. It's a really random quote that I love. Bruce Lee, he said, a true warrior and winner is an average man with extreme focus. And
that's good.
Yeah, live by that.
Huh.
You don't got to be the skilled man. You got to be a guy with the focus, the hunger. So that's got to be the goal.
Yeah.
So
no, I love that.
Yeah.
And I know that for me that like when my self-esteem or when my focus maybe isn't there, it's real easy for my esteem to lower. It's really when I am not or when I'm complacent, it's really easy for my self-esteem to kind of tank, my confidence to wither. And so to know that for me personally as a coach of students or a coach of ultimate frisbee or even something so stupid like I love to tie bow ties and literally coaching someone how to tie a bow tie. If I don't have confidence in in whatever the heck I'm doing, like my self-esteem just drops. So we need to make sure that we don't have an overconfidence and we don't overshoot that towards arrogance and pride, but to know that there is a confidence and like, no, like I know what I'm doing.
Right.
Like I know how I'm doing this and I'm going to stay focused. And the more I stay focused, hopefully the more confident I can be and the healthier focused self-esteem that I can have. How do you interact with individuals who are on your team but don't respect you or have a teachable spirit? So we talked about this a little moment ago of someone who's maybe like has too much hunger, but it kind of in a good way, could be a bad way. But what about the kind of the other way around of like just someone who's just not teachable? They don't respect you as a coach, etc.
put him on the bench. But also that was half a joke. But at the same time, put him on the bench, but give him ways to get out. You're on the bench because you didn't listen to me. You're on the bench because you didn't respect your teammate. You're on the bench because we gave you a game plan and you decided to do your own thing. And if you think about Jesus, something that's really hard that nobody really wants, preachers don't like talking about because it's a hard truth, is the people that didn't listen to Jesus. You know what Jesus did? He let them go. Let him go. Figuratively, he put him on the bench.
Yeah.
He's going to focus on the guys that'll listen.
Whew.
And he didn't take the guys that were the best. I can't tell how many times I've seen the better team lose. The people that are coachable, who listen, they usually win. So that applies to sports. That applies to ministry. That applies to Jesus. I can't tell how many times I've beat a better team. My team's ready. And that applies spiritually, right?
Gosh.
Football, yeah.
Dude, well, what I wrestle I think in a good way. But what I wrestle about that is that you said you just quickly, abruptly, jokingly, but seriously said, put him on the bench.
Put
and
him
I'm
on
like,
the bench.
I'm like, dang, but there's one side of me. It's like, well, the gracious side of me. It's like, well, we could give them one more chance, or we can give them another opportunity to be able to prove themselves. But what I respect about what you just said was like, no, like there needs to be consequences for someone who's unteachable. There needs to be a level of accountability and structure for someone who maybe doesn't respect you as a coach. And I think that's something that myself and others who maybe tend to be more on the gracious side or the second chance side, which is a beautiful thing. Jesus is a person of second chances, but as you said, he also just let people go when they weren't willing to be teachable, or he benched them, as you put it. And I think that another piece that you had said earlier that just really adequately speaks into this, but in a different angle, is like when you said defining the win. Like if you bench your star player, there's a high probability you're going to lose. Technically that's not winning, unless you look at it from you're building someone, you're trying to build someone's character. You're trying to build someone's understanding of there's consequences for your actions. Like that can be defined as a win.
Right.
It's a different way to think. And it's undesirable in the sense of but our record is now one loss higher. That's not fun. Or in the workplace, when you slap someone on the wrist and you kind of bench them for a little bit or remove responsibility, maybe the work is on you a little bit more, or maybe it's going to be more obnoxious or difficult. But if playing the long game of trying to help build someone's character or trying to help build someone's understanding and maturity, long game, that's a win.
Right.
And that's so crucial.
Yeah. If you usually there's two types of coaches, two types of preachers. You got coaches who usually build people well or players well. Sometimes every once in a while you get a coach who can do both. As a preacher, usually you get a guy who can build up or somebody who breaks down. Sometimes you get people who can do both. So it's tough, man.
Can you help define there for a second the difference between player and people?
Players on the field, scoring touchdowns, putting the ball in the rim, throwing a 95-mile-an-hour fastball at the player. The people, sometimes building people is putting your star player on the bench.
Got it.
Yeah.
So the idea of like building someone like on the field and off the field, and also you're not just looking at them as a player, literally on the court, on the field, but in the ring, but literally them as a whole person, and them as an individual who is not just their skills, but also their heart, and also the man or the woman that they are off the field.
Boom.
That's super good.
Yeah.
No, thanks for breaking that down. I think that's again an excellent way to think about it. Again, even the workspace, as someone who like a youth volunteer who is under my leadership, they're not just youth volunteer. Like on the court, on the field, they're a youth volunteer, but outside in my perspective, but outside of that, there's so much more than that, and it would be remiss of me to not think of the individual as someone bigger and better than just someone on a Wednesday night youth group kind of night. So to be able to think in that way as a coach, I think is crucial as well. So let's get real practical. How does one grow practically in the art of coaching?
It starts with you. If you're hungry again, you'll find things to get better at. But some super practical things that I've seen. There's a lot of clinics. I'm actually going to start doing some clinics myself for coaching this spring for baseball because I need it, but also for football. Even though I feel like I've done a good job up to this point coaching football, I got to keep adapting because everybody around me is going to keep adapting. And if I stay the same, they're going to get better. So clinics, the most important thing with football and baseball and in ministry is to be around the people in person that you want to become. Discipleship.
That's
and
good.
that applies to coaching. I am around coaches who are a better coach than me, and I watch what they do. There's no clinic can teach that. You can be around them for a weekend, but consistently being around somebody who is better at what you do, you're going to get better.
I think that's like a really it's tangible, it's practical, it takes time,
Right.
to be able to be around people. But I know that for me personally, I love like looking at other pastors who have had more years than me, who have better preaching skills, leadership skills. I love, again, I comically said like bow ties earlier, but like even when I was learning how to tie a bow tie, okay, great, I'm going on YouTube and I'm what am I doing? I'm watching someone who is better than me on how to tie a bow tie. So surrounding yourself around people who continuously can teach you in your craft is super needed.
Right.
And also it's humbling.
Right.
It shows other people that you're willing to keep learning, that you haven't arrived. And I think that coaches that embody that hunger and that humility of I'm going to keep learning. I think that the players, I think that the students, I think that the people that are under your leadership, they want to keep following you. When they see that when you're humble and when you're hungry to keep adapting and keep learning, that in my opinion, that just increases your influence.
Right. Yeah.
I think that's something that we need to, the humble and the hungry piece, we really need to keep thinking through. Hey, what are some books? What are some videos? What are some articles? I don't know, something that you could recommend for us if we wanted to continue this conversation further on this topic.
A book, The Power of Positivity, and how that impacts everything, emotionally, physically, spiritually, just seeing things in a positive manner and in a similar way that Jesus did. Literally changes everything. It changes everything to people around you. That's a great book. I can't recommend that enough for coaching. And then a podcast that's cool that some of our coaches listen to is the Craig Rochelle Leadership Podcast. That almost everything he does applies to coaching. And you think, it's for business or it's for churches. And as a coaching staff listening to that particular podcast, it's fascinating how well and it applied to what we were doing. So those are two things: Power Positivity, Craig Rochelle Leadership Podcast.
That's great. I think that the Power Positivity book, I've heard of it, haven't read it before, so now you've put that on my radar to read. But then the Craig Rochelle Leadership Podcast, my goodness, that man is a wealth of insight and profundity that I just adore listening to myself. So thanks for even bringing that to our listeners. As much as I like this podcast that we get to do here, I will totally say Craig Rochelle is 1,000,005 times better, 1,000,006 actually. Right. And so if you have limited space and time, go and listen to Craig Rochelle all the live long day. So, hey, Jordan, we're landing the plane of this, bro. Any final words of wisdom, insight, caution that you would give to our listeners as we conclude?
Learn what winning is. Attack it. That's it, man. There's so many things you could say. Keep things simple. Being able to be an effective communicator of what winning is to your players, to the people around you, and hoping that whoever's coaching you is doing the same thing would change everything. That's when winning happens. So,
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, dude, I think that this has been we've covered a lot of ground in this, but we've definitely seen some themes that you've mentioned that we've articulated together, and I think that I'm hoping that there's something for someone to take with them, a nugget of insight, a truth to walk away from, an encouragement and a challenge, because as someone who has been able to watch you as a brother, as a friend, as a coach over the past couple of years, man, it's been so fun to watch you embody these things that we've just been discussing here, man. So thanks for being willing to be a hungry person. Thanks for being willing to be a humble person. Thanks for being willing to speak towards embarrassing moments and mess ups, and knowing that that you're a work in progress, dude. And I know that about you, and I love your realisticness that I see in you, and it's just it's fun. It's fun to watch, bro. So just thanks. I really appreciate you. Thanks for coming on here and speaking to this concept of the art of coaching. It's been a privilege and a blessing, man. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And if you are listening to this, you're enjoying what you're hearing, you're liking what you're listening to, would you be willing to give a rating, hit the share button wherever you consume the content? And we hope that you'll join us next time as we continue to explore the art and science of building influential capacity. Catch you next time.